Hi there, John Wilkinson again and History Made Easier again. This video is going to take a look at the lives of German youth and the lives of German women. And hopefully I'm going to show how a really good notes framework can set you up to face any exam question. Let's take a look. So here's my book, Life in Nazi Germany, and I've got 3 frameworks that I would like to show you before we focus on the one that this video is going to look at. Here's the first one, and you can see that it's very, very simple. I've divided the working groups from big business down to farmers, and I'm simply asking the question, are they better off? Were they better off? Or were they not better off? As simple as that. It will cover your exam. No frameworks don't have to be rocket science. They can be very, very simple. But let me turn now to the one that we're going to focus on. And this is German youth and women in Nazi Germany, and you can see it's slightly more sophisticated. It asks a series of questions. What did the Nazis want? It would cover a question A and give details for questions B and C. Why did they want that? Question B, obviously. What did they do, and to what effect? Question C, largely. So you can see how I'm covering the different exam questions that could come your way. But before we actually look at that, let me show you another one that I've produced further on in the book to cover the war period. How did war change life in Nazi Germany? So we have all Germans, young Germans, German women. And I've put notes to cover economic, materialistic aspects, goods in the shops, for example. I've got a section to cover the psychological impact of war. Very much a factor in modern war when while civilians are worrying about their loved ones at the fronts, they are also being subjected to bombing and to restrictions on food supplies and whatever as their country is blockaded. And I've looked at direct impacts, and for me this would include things like say the direct impact of the bombing raids, the direct impact of restrictions on food supplies and what have you with rationing. So, they are 3 frameworks that I've used in this book, but let's go back to the main focus for today, and it's this framework on German youth and women in Nazi Germany. And how would we use it? Well, the kind of things that I would put in here, I'm only going to give you the headlines. I'm not going to give you examples or whatever, but the kind of things that I would put here are, well, what did the Nazis want for German youth? Well, they needed their youth to adopt military ideals, loyalty, obedience, sacrifice, and discipline. That's essentially what they wanted. Why? Because aiming for things like tearing up the Treaty of Versailles, aiming for Lebensraum, becoming a master race, it would mean war. War in the near future. Not only that, but Hitler was planning for 1,000-year Reich. German youth would be easier to convert and keep loyal. So that is at least the beginnings of the why. What did they do? This would cover a lot of ground, but in education, we would look at the radical changes, controlling teachers, the radical changes to the curriculum, establishing special schools, and we'd put just a little bit of detail to that for our notes. And by building a comprehensive youth movement to inculcate German youth with Nazi ideology and to get them physically fit and military minded, they together, their policies in education and their policies for a Nazi youth movement, together they got the youth that they wanted, mostly. And we have to consider to what effect, how far was this successful? Well, we can look at what was done, for e.g. the changes in the national curriculum or membership of the Hitler Youth, and we can tick a box for success there, but we should balance it against the fact that such things were forced on German youth, and whilst there was always choice, limited choice, we have to point out that something like 1 million children never joined the Hitler Youth. So choice might have been very limited and even requiring bravery on the part of their parents. The choices were made, and many Germans ignored the pressure that was being put on them. So, we put more detail to that, but there was a balance there. But I think we would have to accept that ultimately there was no avoiding the degree of indoctrination that Hitler Youth were subjected to. As for women, again briefly with the bold headlines, well, I would make sure I've got the good old Kinderkirchen Kutsch in there, the two spheres of influence, women's role as wives and mothers, playing a critical role in the racial community. That's what I'd put in the what. As for the why, well, to ensure the racial community, there were concerns about the declining birth rate, and if the Aryans were indeed the master race, it had to be seen as virile, that master race. It was also needed, Germany would also need a larger population if it was to go to war and populate that living space that it so much wanted. But behind all this, there was also the belief in Nazism that women simply weren't as capable as men. Nazism was a sexist ideology as much as it was a racist ideology. So, we have, what did they do? Well, indoctrination, and we have a range of organisations, the League of Young Girls, the League of German Girls, Faith and Beauty organisation, the National Socialist Women's League. We could include the domestic year that was introduced and later the duty year. Loans were given for young couples if the wife gave up work. Medals for large families. I think you needed 8 children for a gold medal. Contraception and abortion was banned. And there was the Lebensborn program. So plenty of what they did could be put in there. Now, to what effect? The birth rate did increase, though it's difficult to isolate causal factors here. Women were driven out of the professions, but then, of course, they were encouraged back to work during the war, though with little success, actually. It's also difficult to measure the Nazis' influence against the influence of the dominant culture in the 1930s. We have to bear in mind that this was a different age, and women were seen much more commonly as having their place in the home, their place as wives and good mothers. So that is my framework, and that is how I would use it. It is only a sketch of what I would include in there. I would bring more detail to that you will find in my book. But I hope it shows that these frameworks are very simple. As I said earlier, there really is not rocket science behind them, but there is some thought to your exam needs. There is some thought towards directing your notes to the likely questions that you're going to get, and it makes your reading efficient and effective, and when you come to revise in, it might be 12 months time or whatever, depending how your curriculum is taught, when you come to revise, it's a lot easier to go back to notes that are directed to your needs. So there you are. I hope that was useful for you.